What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are having yourself a very Merry Christmas. Obviously, we have a lot to get to. Before we do, a reminder that our post-game show here at Blogging the Boys is presented to you by Righteous Felon Craft Jerky, the jerky that helps fuel our now 10-3 Dallas Cowboys. That is correct. Righteous Felon Jerky and Biltong are available for Cowboys players at the Ford Center Training Facility. Each 2-ounce bag of jerky has 16 to 20 grams of protein. Biltong has 32, and each meat stick has 8 grams of protein. If it's good enough for the 10-3 Dallas Cowboys, it has got to be good enough for you too. Righteous Felon uses locally sourced all-natural black Angus beef and prides itself on superior quality, revolutionary branding, and unique flavors that go beyond the stereotypical jerky offering. Go to righteousfelon.com and use code BTB15 at checkout to get 15% off your order. That is righteousfelon.com, code BTB15 for 15% off your order. They make great stocking stuffers this time of year. All right, we have a lot to get to. This is your post-game show, of course, streaming live on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. You can catch the rewatch if you are not here live. You can always listen to the podcast version on the Blogging the Boys podcast network as well. Subscribe however you're watching or listening. Please leave a rating, write a review. But for the live audience, we are going to commiserate and celebrate together because the Dallas Cowboys eked one out by the hair on their chinny chin chin, the skin of their teeth against the Houston Texans, the little brothers within the state. 27-23, the final score. Johnny Boy RN says this game was an utter failure to prepare for a team's strengths and weakness due to an assumption that showing up would be enough. I don't know if you're a betting person, not necessarily you, Johnny Boy, but any person watching or listening. If you are, what maybe line you got the Cowboys at, whether it was 16, 16 and a half, 17. The Cowboys at one point in time were 17-point favorites against their little brothers, the old stepbrothers, as Michael Irvin referred to them on NFL Network this morning. And they won by 4. They did win. They did get the win. And that is ultimately the most important thing. Now, we shouldn't live in that world. We shouldn't say, well, they won, nothing else matters. No, there's a lot of context that we can get to. I know a lot of you and a lot of Eagles fans who are, here because we live in your heads rent-free are excited about the NFC East mixtape this week, a show I do with the me at SB Nation, Brandon Lee Gouton, who runs our Philadelphia Eagles site. Something that Brandon says a lot, actually, that I really like. He refers to some games as a moral loss. We hear games. Actually, Logical Fan here says this game feels like a loss, right? We've all heard the term moral win before, right? When a team loses a game, but really played their hearts out and was really close. Maybe sometimes when they weren't expected to win, maybe like the way the Indianapolis Colts played the Houston Texans early on in the Jeff Saturday experience, right? We've all heard that term, a moral win. You can take away the feelings and the emotions away from a win, even though you lost. And this is kind of the opposite effect of that, right? This is kind of a moral loss, right? You still get the win. You get the important thing here. You get to put the win in the win column. You're now 10-3, but you can still take away the lessons from a loss because it feels like a loss. DFWAV Geek 521 says this, or I agree, this feels like a loss. So we can all sit here and mope or whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, this does go in the win column as opposed to the loss column. Now, Matt's coming in here saying people forget that even a bad NFL team is good at football. It shouldn't have been this close, but you got to give props to them for stepping up when it mattered the most. Moral loss is loser talk. I don't think it's loser talk. I think it's fair to say that the Cowboys should take away some lessons from this game as if they had lost the game. They should learn. They should have been spooked into the idea that they overlooked this team. Like they were not prepared. Like they thought they could just sleepwalk their way to covering a 17-point spread. And that was clearly not the case because nobody can do that. Logical Fan here says the only stock up is D-Law. He saved the game, literally. I do have a list of stock ups and stock downs. We're going to get to that. It was a very kind of back and forth day. As always, as we are here live, I'm making sure I'm not missing any quotes from Jerry or McCarthy, anybody post game, but nothing yet here as the afternoon games kick off. By the way, the Cowboys did get some help on this particular day. I know that this day everybody wants to be pissed off and everybody wants to be upset. However, something important did come away from today's game. The Dallas Cowboys won, but the Minnesota Vikings lost, which means the Dallas Cowboys, our Dallas Cowboys, are now technically closer to the number 1 seed than they were when we all woke up this morning, when we all got ready for this Texans game, which was a disappointment. Do not get me wrong. The Dallas Cowboys are technically closer to that. We are one Philadelphia Eagles loss away, and we just learned, obviously, that on any given Sunday, to use the proverbial cliche, On any given Sunday, any NFL team can lose. If the Eagles dropped one next week on the road against the Chicago Bears, the Christmas Eve game between the Cowboys and Eagles is literally for the number one seed in the NFC. I mean, it is today, technically, the Cowboys improved their overall standing. It is frustrating that they should have won by a larger margin. It is frustrating that Dak Prescott had a really poor game in a lot of senses, obviously, through two costly interceptions, one that should have lost the game. I really thought that kind of was, the game. Diesel Ladies, by the way, says PLG was right. No one is afraid of Dak. I think if you are taking this game and adding and sort of applying all of it to who Dak Prescott is, I don't think that's fair. It was a poor game from Dak Prescott. By the way, tweet right now from the Athletics, John Machota. Jerry Jones didn't know the severity of Terrence Steele's knee injury, but said Jason Peters and Josh Ball will both get opportunities at right tackle if Steele is out. No plan to move Tyron Smith or Tyler Smith to right tackle. All right, this is going to take us. We have a lot of ways, a lot of directions to go into here for the totality of this show. Stock down Josh Ball. I mean, my goodness, it is amazing that you could come into this game, not even as a starter, and earn a stock down. Josh Ball almost lost this game for the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, Terrence Steele left early on with the knee injury. We're all hoping he's all right. Terrence Steele has been one of the best, sort of stories of this season. But Josh Ball had to come in and look, I have eaten a lot of crow. All right. My belly is very full when it comes to Crow and the Dallas Cowboys and decisions that they made over the course of the offseason. But one thing that never, ever, ever made any sense was them banking on Josh Ball to be their primary swing tackle, or at least one of their primary swing tackles. The Cowboys did not shore up their tackle depth behind Tyron Smith. That crap hit the fan when it came to training camp. Tyler Smith came in and saved them, absolutely saved them. Tyler Smith has, and he's gotten to them to the point where Tyron Smith could be returning next week, maybe the following week against the Eagles. We don't know. But obviously, Terrence Steele has been holding things down on the right side of the line. Josh Ball came in, and the Cowboys even told us. You guys remember the Denver game, the Denver preseason game, that is? They told us, they said, don't worry about how Josh is playing at swing tackle. All right, Tyler's going to be fine. Josh is better on the right side anyway. Josh is so much better on the right side. So don't worry, y'all just freaking out for nothing. All right, Josh, step on up. Terrence Steele goes down. It's your time to shine. Josh Ball, horrible. In fact, Josh Ball was so horrible that he got benched. So not only did Josh Ball not start in this game, he got benched. Think about how bad you have to be to come into an NFL game as a reserve, as a substitute, as an option after an injury, and still get benched. I mean, it is very, 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 very sad that this is the case here, but stock up. Similarly, what goes down must come up. So stock down for Josh Ball, stock up to Jason Peters. This was the moment that Jason Peters saved the Cowboys. The Cowboys won this game 27-23 and might not have won it if not for Jason Peters. The fact that the Cowboys, when the going got tough, when they had to have things on that final drive, they put Jason Peters in on the right side, and he was wonderful. And obviously, I don't think any of us can properly understand how difficult that is to just all of a sudden play right tackle in the NFL. For Jason Peters to switch sides on the money drive and just do an incredible job the way that he did really, really, really speaks to why he is going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame someday. So stock down Josh Ball, stock up Jason Peters. He came in, he saved things. I do not ever want to see Josh Ball play for the Dallas Cowboys ever again. I certainly don't want to see him get any time at right tackle if Terrence Steele has to miss time. Jason Peters is and should be the only option if Terrence Steele is unable to go. Sorry, Johnny Boy says, we did not need this game to know that Josh Ball is not an effective offensive tackle, right or left side. I agree with that. Survivor 722 Gaming. By the way, this week, the season's finale of Survivor. Cannot wait. I'm super pumped for the 2-hour season finale. But Survivor 722 Gaming says, RJ, I could play right tackle better than Ball. Of course, Peters would do better. That's true, but it still was not easy what Jason Peters did, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. Jacob says, Peters talked about playing right tackle if needed when we signed him. True team player. Very much agreed. D-Day 2 says, Peters, no practice, not used to playing right tackle, is still a big upgrade over Ball. Agreed. Michael Gelkin of the Dallas Morning News right now tweeting out that Terrence Steele is scheduled for an MRI on his left knee on Monday. The Cowboys do have Jason Peters, but man, it is a tough situation. So our poll question, if you're watching live, if you're not watching live or listening live, obviously you can't participate. Those are just the rules, the way YouTube works. Is who is our righteous felon craft jerky player of the game? Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard. I thought Leighton Vander Esch was the best player. That's the direction I would lean in. But if you're here now, please vote in that. We will hand out our righteous felon craft jerky player of the game afterwards. Man, Mr. Cynical says, how the hell did Dallas win this? If you want to be cynical, Do any of us, I'll ask the question. You can answer yes or no if you're here with us live. Do any of us think that Houston ordered the code red at the very end? Do any of us think that the Texans and Lovie Smith were like, yeah, it's code red time. All right, we've had our fun. We flirted around. We had a good time. All right, we almost won this game. We proved we were the better team in this game, but we're super close, people. We're really close to Christmas time. Let's go ahead. Let's lock up this number 1 overall pick. We don't need to mess around with anything like that. Let's go get this done. Let's call everything back. Now, Kevin says, no, that is silly, RJ. I don't think it's silly. Brian says, no, they were trying. I think it's possible. I mean, I want to outright accuse the Texans of this, but just having a little bit of fun here. But how the Cowboys won this game, and this is the kind of week where nothing I say or nothing anybody says is going to make you feel better. We're all pissed off, and we're all just looking for an outlet for this pissed offness, right? We're trying to shine it out like a Care Bear, just with the way they shine those things out of their chests. We just want to get rid of this pissed offness. And so if you want to know the answer, Mr. Cynical, how did the Cowboys win this game? Because of Dak Prescott at the very end. And not just Dak Prescott, because of Dak Prescott and Dalton Schultz and that clutch Noah Brown catch and Jason Peters playing right tackle at a moment's notice, because the Cowboys took things seriously at the very end, because DeMarcus Lawrence, holy crap, what an amazing stop, because DeMarcus Lawrence came up with the clutch stop right near the goal line, because the Texans can't figure out how to run an offensive play on 4th and goal or 3rd and goal, whatever it was. I mean, they cannot figure things out, whether they did order the code red or not. I mean, that is why they won this game, because they are the better team in the overall. And when they had to have one thing, they did it. They put their crap together for one moment in time to get that moment in time, and that was the most valuable moment. That's really what it was. They hit on 20, and that ace came out of the deck. That is how the Cowboys won this game. They should have lost. You can make a very, 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 very strong argument that they should have lost this game. And this is kind of the difference, right? This is the difference between, when this season is over, being 13-4 or 12-5, being 14-3 and 13-4. These games that you're not supposed to win, finding a way. And I think you could ask the same question: how did the Eagles beat the Colts? Right? Sometimes games like that unfold. You could certainly ask that question about how did the Bills beat the Lions on Thanksgiving, right? There's all sorts of examples where teams, and I don't mean to lump the Lions into the same place as the Colts and the Texans, and the Lions actually did us a favor, obviously, by beating the Minnesota Vikings today, but that happens. Sometimes it comes down, sometimes the 60-minute game, the 60-minute sequence, this whole stretch of time, sometimes it comes down to one series, one moment, one player, one quarterback, one throw, one opportunity, one shot. If you had it, shout out Eminem, of course, speaking of Detroit. I mean, the Cowboys pulled it off. They pulled off the thing that they had to have when they had to have it. All right, making sure we're not missing anything here, by the way. Just, wow. Glenn, I like this comment here. It says, the turning point of the game, the Turpin fumble. Turpin don't fumble. We go down and score. The Texans fold. Look, Cowboy, if you missed this game, maybe you were busy. It's a Sunday noon game. Sometimes things happen. So the Cowboys get the ball to start the game. Texans win the toss, in case you're curious. They defer. All right, Dallas gets the ball. They go down the field. Tony Pollard scores. Bada bing, bada boom. We're going to cover, baby. 16-17. Line should have been 20. We're going to cover this easily. Cowboys defense gets on the field. 3 and out. 20. Make it 25. This is Bama. All right, we're about to cover this thing in our sleep. No sweat about it. Texans punt. So to be clear, at this point in time, the Cowboys have gone down the field on their opening possession, which is kind of a rare thing for them this season, and scored a touchdown. Their defense has come out and answered the call and gone 3 and out. And then on the punt return, Kevontae Turpin muffs it. You cannot do that. You absolutely cannot do that. Stock down Kevontae Turpin. And look, I don't think that Kevontae Turpin is a bad player for the Cowboys. I don't think that Kevontae Turpin, by the way, there was a lot happening in the aftermath of this game, getting things ready for the show. I'm seeing some of your comments. Did they give that last interception to Israel Mukuamu over Trayvon Diggs? I do need some confirmation. Kevin says Israel stole an interception from Diggs. So it does seem like the interception was awarded to Israel Mukuamu. But that being said, man, Kevontae Turpin, you cannot. Oh, thank you, Donnie, for letting me know. Kevontae Turpin, and then letting the punt go near the end of the game and just letting the Texans down you at the 1 yard line. This was just a really, really, really bad game for Kevontae Turpin. Now, we have not seen him house any punt or house any kickoff. He has made a difference. I don't think that any person should look at this game or look at these couple of moments and say Kevontae Turpin's trash, blah, blah, blah. He has been an important member of the Dallas Cowboys this season, but man alive, he was almost the reason that they lost this game. You cannot do that. You cannot give opponents the ball inside your own 25-yard line. Dak Prescott did that twice. I mean, you just cannot commit those mistakes. And Kevontae Turpin had one of the worst games of his professional career, at least in the NFL. He's obviously been around the block when it comes to various leagues. A lot of you are bringing this up. Let's see. Kenneth Cook says, by the way, first game without a sack from any player. You would have thought that, I mean, the Cowboys would have been adding to their total, but that's where things just don't stick, right? And this one example is after the Cowboys beat the Commanders, right? A long time ago now. Everybody, and this is not a great example, but everybody said at the time, right, Deron Bland's better than Jordan Lewis. Watch out, watch out, watch out. He's going to be amazing. He's going to be amazing. And he has been amazing. I don't want to, take away, because I thought Deron Bland played very well today. For the most part. Obviously, it was a rough game for the Cowboys secondary in some respects, but turns out he wasn't this like shutdown nickel corner from day one. Turns out Jordan Lewis was better, and obviously Jordan Lewis got hurt and everything that happened in between. But people, we sometimes live in the moment like that. We sometimes live in the moment and say, oh, this is going to happen. This one amazing thing that has happened twice is going to happen all the time now. And it was just eventually there was going to be some regression, right? There was going to be some regression to the mean for the Cowboys as far as sacks were concerned. They weren't going to have 6 sacks a game. They weren't going to pull that off over and over and over and over again. And so this was a bit of regression, and it almost caught them. That almost bit them. They did not get the kind of little things that they'd been getting to this point in the season, but they still found a way to win, which is certainly impressive. Eston Kirby says, man, this game was bad for everyone. Jaime, I want to get into this subject. Jaime says, Micah looks hurt since last week. I saw another comment, and it's gone at this point in time. Let's see here. Link says, Micah playing with injuries. All teams are by this point. I agree with that. But it did feel, look, I don't want to at all say like Micah Parsons is not a great player. Micah Parsons is the best player on this team, to be very clear. There's no doubt about it. But it has, what was the last like Micah moment? Right, Micah had an impressive game against the Giants on Thanksgiving Day, was just kind of invisible, relatively speaking, against the Colts because everybody else kind of had these big splash, sexy moments. But yeah, this was maybe the least impactful that Micah Parsons has been since joining the Cowboys. I mean, I don't know that is like a shock. But man, by the way, Jane Slater tweeting just now that Trayvon Diggs battled through not one, but 2 banged up thumbs. She tweeted, tells me the left one got jammed up on the second drive of the game, taped up, played through it. Also adds he didn't get the interception. So Trayvon seems to be okay, but did have the 2 thumb issues. And so actually his thumb's so well intact that he almost had that interception that Ezekiel Elliott stole. But man, I mean, it's Joe's Racing Team says Micah seemed very low energy. Mark says Micah seems a bit slow. Houston quarterback outran him at the end. It's just been a weird little stretch, and like tiny. I mean, like, and Micah is the just a tremendous enough player that, him not having these incredible game-changing plays is weird for him, right? We've just grown accustomed to Micah having massive impactful moments week to week to week to week, which is impossible. That was never going to be the case for his entire NFL career. It is strange, right, that this game that we're talking about, this performance from him came against the Houston Texans. I will say Micah's greatest impact in this game came at the very end. Laramie Tunsil, man, I mean, Micah Parsons, you can take up all the real estate you want because Micah Parsons was living in Laramie Tunsil's head completely and totally rent-free at the very end. Back-to-back false starts, obviously, as Houston was trying to pull off a miracle before the, I guess, Israel Mukuamu interception. So Micah's still making an impact, but we're just not seeing it in the same way that we have been, that is more common and more obvious. I think Patrick Mahomes just did something amazing. So that is what is happening here. But in case you're curious, because this happens when we're on right after the noon games, Panthers up 10-0 on the Seahawks. The Niners up 7-0. If you're curious, the Niners-Bucks game doesn't have a huge impact on us as Cowboys fans. That can go either way. It's just a matter of preference. I personally would rather see the Bucks lose. I'd like to get Tampa out of the fold. Plus, if the Panthers can wind up winning and win the NFC South, that would maybe help the Cowboys out in terms of being the team they visit in the wild card round if it does come down to that. But back to the game, Kenneth Cook says 11 is the best player on the Cowboys. The 2 penalties in the last Texans drive was because the offense was scared. Agreed. Alex, by the way, says focus, Cowboys talk. It's all relative. Let's see here. D-Day 2 says Houston ran super safe plays because of turnovers by our offense. Not many times there were must-pass situations. Here's the thing. I don't know that Houston did anything amazing against the Cowboys. I do think the Cowboys just just kind of chilled. I mean, just kind of thought they could sleepwalk through this, and they couldn't. I guess they could. I mean, they kind of did, but they had to get serious here. And what's frustrating and a little bit concerning is that when they tried to get serious in the very end, they still couldn't do it. Right? That the Dak Prescott interception that almost lost the game was, and I know he got bumped, I know he got hit, I know all of that, but man, it was really, really frustrating. If it isn't obvious, Dak Prescott on the stock down list. Dak is. There are multiple things that can be true here. All right. Something that, among the list of all things that are true right now, number one, Dak Prescott played very poorly against the Houston Texans. Nobody's going to deny that. Nobody's going to tell you anything. Number two, when the Cowboys had to have a drive, Dak Prescott pulled it off at the very end. That does not undo or, unmake the bed that he put them in, but the Cowboys had to have a drive at the very end of the game. Dak Prescott executed it. He deserves credit for that drive, but obviously everything leading up to that basically was very questionable and very unfortunate. It is also true that Dak Prescott has been playing very well for the most part. He's had these moments. And I mentioned this on the mixtape. I've mentioned this several places. If you're going to read anybody talking about this subject, I would read Bob Sturm. Obviously, the great Bob Sturm of The Ticket. The Athletic is where you can find his written work. I think we would agree that Dak has been a touch over aggressive, and we've seen that kind of burn them. And you could argue in this game, the tip ball, things like that, whatever. But man, and that's the thing, like, David's comment here, and I agree with this, like in a literal sense. David's comment says both interceptions aren't on Dak, though. One hit Noah Brown in the shoulder, the other is on Josh Ball. I agree with that. That's fair, right? That's fair context. This is where multiple things can be true. I know that this isn't your point, David Holden. I don't think Dak is this victim. I don't think Dak is infallible when it comes to those interceptions. Or, we talked about the interceptions in Green Bay, or the interception early on against the Giants when he thought he had a freed play. At some point, that there is a blend and a balance of responsibility and blame and criticism for us to levy. This was not a great game for Dak Prescott for the most part, but he did have the drive at the very end that he had to, which was important. Zach, by the way, has to go somewhere. Says can't stay for long, but sheesh, stock down Dak, and that was an ugly one. Agreed. Let's see here. Shane says Dak has been showing signs of a game like this for a while. I think that's very well said. It's just kind of been hovering right now. Dak has played very well, and this is where Dak, look, this is the Cowboys and Dak Prescott and all this stuff, but people make this into extremes. He's either like playing at the most elite level for 100% of the time, or he's trash for 100% of the time. That is never true. That is not true of any quarterback or any player of anyone in the NFL, of any sport, whatever the case may be. But man, this was the worst game I think he's played since coming back. And I thought last week was the worst game he had played since coming back. So he outdid that. And that's concerning. Obviously, he was incredible in the second half against the Giants on Thanksgiving Day. He was wonderful against the Vikings now about a month ago, obviously, as the Cowboys dismantled them. He was very good, obviously, against the Chicago Bears. The game against the Lions, I think we're all willing to give him first one back. The game against the Packers, again, the interceptions you can probably put on Dak, but he has played very well for the most part. He has put them in positions to win. They've been a high-scoring offense. On the surface, I mean, they scored a lot of points technically in this game, but there's a lot for him to improve on, I think. Which we should totally pay attention to. Kevin, by the way, says stock down Schultz, same as Dak, great last drive, but wouldn't have been in that spot had he not dropped a touchdown. I 100% agree with you. Stock down, Dalton Schultz did make my list as well. What was the last like great play that Dalton Schultz made? And I'm not trying to point fingers or anything. I'm genuinely asking. What was the last time? Obviously, Dak and Dalton had a wonderful sort of final drive in this game against Houston. But what was the last moment that you were like, man, that's Dalton Schultz? It's just been, and it's an unfortunate year for Dalton, obviously playing on the tag. I think everybody knows, and he obviously wanted to have a big season, to put himself in a prominent position for free agency in the summer and the spring. But man, just not the best game for him. Again, had an important role in the drive at the very end, deserves credit for that. But not a great, game all the way up until that. Kelsey, by the way, says, I don't know. He drops touchdowns. Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough situation. But let's see here, making sure I'm not missing anything from Jerry or anybody. The Niners are punting to the Bucs, if you do care about that. So all is well. Everything's normal as far as Jerry and the Cowboys are concerned. Let's see here. I'm always a tough situation for me. Here we go. 1 point / JG26 _ JDog says Dalton has had several big drops this year. I agree. I agree. Hyman notes that we have some Eagles fans in the comments. You would think that the Eagles fans would be celebrating their own team's victory, but alas, rent-free, all that fun stuff. Mark says, let's see here, where the heck was James Washington today? It was James Washington's debut. One target, as far as I'm concerned. I believe that's what he got officially, one target for James Washington, and he got rocked on it. And was not able to haul it in. The only Cowboy targeted today that did not have a reception. First game back, if you had lofty expectations, I'm not saying you did, Mark, but I think that would have been unfair to James Washington. I mean, it had been a long time since James Washington had taken a hit like that, obviously, with him missing all this time. So just kind of is what it is. Let's see here. Mikey Montano, thank you for the notes. His steals probably out for the season based on tweets. That would suck a lot. But we will see what happens. The Jason Peters' presence does, I think, make us feel better about that. But so, Josh Ball's presence, I think, makes us feel concerned. Watsamata says, I'm liking Noah Brown for stock up. So when I came into this, I did not have him listed, but obviously, as is the case here, I do reserve the right to change this. So thank you, Watsamata, for your comment. Let me get this typed up here. Stock up Noah Brown. What a clutch catch at the very end of this game. And by the way, we will see what the situation is on Terrence Steele, so nobody panic quite yet. But Noah Brown was awesome. This was maybe the best. Am I wrong here? I'd be curious if anybody agreed. This felt like the best Noah Brown game with Dak Prescott at quarterback. Maybe not the best Noah Brown game of the season, but obviously the more prominent Noah Brown games came early on when Michael Gallup was still out and Cooper Rush was the quarterback. But this was the best I thought Noah Brown played with Dak Prescott. Obviously, as the team starting quarterback, so good for him in that sense. Noah Brown's official stat line finished the day 6 targets, 4 receptions, an appropriate 85 yards for number 85, 21.3 yards reception, led the Cowboys in that capacity, had the clutch performance or clutch catch near the very end of this game. So yeah, Noah Brown, like I said, it was a bit of a manic situation to get the show off and running. So I didn't have Noah Brown originally, but he definitely makes the list. He'll be on the list when I do it. Obviously over on Instagram and when I write the article at bloggingtheboys.com. So congratulations to Noah Brown. That's just me showing you some transparency because Noah Brown I thought was wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and give Tony Pollard a stock up. He had the 2 touchdowns, the only 2 touchdowns before the very end. What else is there to say at this point? I mean, who is a more explosive player in the NFL of non-quarterbacks? Who is a more explosive player than Tony Pollard? Tyreek Hill? That's the only one I could think of off the top of my head. Like, who is a more explosive player than Tony Pollard besides Tyreek Hill? I'm willing to give you Tyreek Hill. I'm very willing to give you that one. But who else? I struggle. It is very difficult to come up with another player across the entire NFL outside of Tyreek Hill, non-quarterbacks, obviously, that is more explosive, certainly on a week-to-week basis than Tony Pollard. You can make an argument, obviously, for Christian McCaffrey when he's on. I mean, he is one of the more dangerous players in the NFL. I think in the past, you could have made an argument for Alvin Kamara. Obviously, hasn't been quite the same season for him. Travis Kelce is an amazing player. I like this answer from David Holden. Justin Jefferson, that's there, but obviously the Vikings lost today, so a little bit of wind out of those sails. Christopher Lopez says Waddle. You can make an argument for Jalen Waddle. Loco, Debo Samuel. I think that's a great answer. Johnny Boy says maybe A.J. Brown. My point is that it's a short list, right? Like maybe I got a little bit exaggerated in my initial moment thinking he's number 2 behind Tyreek, but he's in the top 5 of most explosive players in the NFL. I just don't see how, we're focusing on this game in the current moment, but I don't see how the Cowboys let him walk this offseason. It just feels really strange to let that happen in my mind. The Buccaneers, by the way, have just tied it with the 49ers thanks to a huge Mike Evans touchdown. So I hope that you had Mike Evans on your fantasy team. Jaime Vasquez, the most important comment of the day, notes that tomorrow is Victory Polo Monday, baby. Still counts. A win is a win. That is very well said. So stock up Tony Pollard in addition to Noah Brown. Of course, we already talked about him. I mentioned this. Leighton Vander Esch. Leighton gets a stock up for me. I honestly think, look, we have our poll question going. Obviously, if you're watching us live, who the Righteous Felon Craft Turkey player of the game was, Tony Pollard, Zeke Elliott, or Leighton Vander Esch. But man alive, I really thought that Leighton was maybe the best defensive player on the Cowboys today. He really was. Like, Leighton was so good today in a way that I mean, he's been good all season. And I don't want to, I know people will be like, jinx, blah, blah, blah. But Leighton Vander Esch played every single game last season. He has not missed a game due to injury this season. I mean, like, Leighton has really done a lot to put the injury conversation behind him. There was that huge stretch like, oh, man, he's super injury prone, Leighton Vander Esch, blah, blah, blah. He has played very, very, very well basically since the Bucs touchdown called back. You all said that sucks. So if y'all had Mike Evans, that sucks for y'all. But Leighton has been awesome. I really thought he was the best defensive player on the Cowboys roster today. Give him all of the props in the world. David Holden says Wolf Hunter's back, baby, and we need him to be. Very much agreed. I mean, we sat here. I know one of the things, look, my disdain for the Josh Ball belief from the Cowboys obviously aged well. I've had a lot of things that aged poorly. And one of them was not necessarily Leighton Vander Esch, but we talked about, right, the reason we wanted Bobby Wagner was because what are you going to do when you have Micah Parsons rushing the passer? Who is going to play linebacker for you all the time? It is irresponsible to rely on Leighton Vander Esch. The Cowboys have relied on Leighton Vander Esch, and it has worked out in their favor. I think that Leighton Vander Esch has been phenomenal. /JD26_JDog nailed it. Says, I think Leighton should get re-signed. The Cowboys were able to pull it off this past year on that one-year deal, that Mo Claiborne thing where they didn't pick up the one-year option or fifth-year option, but then got the one-year deal. I think Leighton's probably made himself some money. As Brian notes, thank you for the super chat, says LVE is a beast. Agreed. Really, really awesome game for Leighton Vander Esch in a lot of senses. So stock up, we did Tony Pollard, Leighton Vander Esch, Jason Peters. We got to Noah Brown. Let's see here. I think we have one more. Let's see. That's 4, right? We've gotten to 4 stock ups. Our final stock up, Zeke Elliott. I mean, Zeke was it feels strange to constantly have Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott both in the stock up conversation. And I would have had Donovan Wilson. He had the forced fumble, but I think he just got edged out by all these performances. I limited it to 5 because there was a lot of stock down to hand out. This Zeke looked awesome in this. Like, it's hard to say this because both Zeke and Pollard have looked great at so many different opportunities and moments this season. This was maybe the best that Zeke has looked. I mean, Zeke looked fresh and was cutting and moving and grooving and had the game-winning touchdown, and so that kind of adds to the effect. I really thought this was an amazing Zeke Elliott game. I hesitate to say it looked like vintage Zeke because I don't think that we'll ever see, 2016 Zeke ever again. But, man, he looked close to that. I mean, he was just on a different level than we've seen even at different points this season. It's good to see. Jared, by the way, says Zeke. Vic Damone says stock down Micah. I didn't go as far as giving Micah stock down, but I'm totally fine having the conversation about him not being at the same level right now. David says, yeah, Zeke was a beast today. Shane Davis, by the way, says, I love the broadcast calling Zeke all reliable. I know that a lot of people don't feel this way. I loved Mark Sanchez. Mark was awesome. Like, Mark was such a great color analyst for this game. He is such a great analyst in general. He is just a really fun media voice. I really enjoyed Mark Sanchez on this call. So did a great job. Zach, we did talk about this. You must be a little bit late, but we can revisit it briefly. Zach says, what do we think of Micah being relatively quiet over the last 2 weeks? I think it's hard. I think it's hard to be that good all the time. And I think that we're seeing that. And I think that, it's December. Micah's been playing at a high level for a very long time. And sometimes that catches up to you. So hopefully we see Micah kind of return to form. By the way, just saw this tweet. Bobby Bell, friend of the show of 105.3 The Fan, tweeted out, Terrence Steele is expected to have an MRI on his knee tomorrow. We talked about that. But this is the first tweet I've seen where somebody notes it. Says there's concern that Steele may not return to the field this season. Also, huge bummer in that sense. Terrence Steele is eligible for a new deal in the offseason. We talk a lot about Trayvon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb and them being eligible for new deals. Terrence Steele was an undrafted free agent in 2020 and has started a lot of games for the Cowboys, right? I mean, I think we all want Terrence Steele on this team in 2023. I mean, so that is a big deal if he's injured and that becomes a factor. That's the way contract negotiations go. So certainly rooting for Terrence Steele in whatever ultimately comes of this MRI and obviously the rest of this season. Jaime, thank you for the super chats, the stock up, RJ Ochoa, and all of the BTB crew. Agreed. Let's see here. Let's move on. Making sure I don't miss. Let's see. Okay, we're all good. Anyway, so Mikey Montano just cutting down to brass tacks. Maybe we can get him cheaper if he's hurt. Mikey, whoa, what's going on? I mean, Mikey has been taken over by the spirit of Stephen Jones here in our live postgame show, of course, presented by Righteous Felon Craft Jerky. Vote, please, for our Righteous Felon Craft Jerky player of the game. All right, so stock up for me. Tony Pollard, Zeke Elliott, Leighton Vander Esch, Jason Peters, Noah Brown. Those are our 5 stock ups. We already talked about Kevontae Turpin. Dak Prescott, Dalton Schultz, and Josh Ball as far as stock downs. A nice even week where we had 5 and 5, I think, if I'm counting them correctly. So that means we have one more stock down to get to. Mike McCarthy. If you follow me, I didn't mean to capitalize the first C. It looks like Mike, like McCarthy. I didn't mean to do that. So I'm sorry if you're watching the show on YouTube. I have given Mike McCarthy a lot of praise and hope and flowers, and I think he deserves all of them. I mentioned this at the top, and we'll put this up here right now. Let's see, where did it go? The Cowboys, in case you did not know this, we talked about this all week long, but the Cowboys have won double-digit games. Today was their 10th win of the season, so they have won. This is objectively true. This is objective fact. You cannot deny this. They have won their 10th game of the year, which means they have won double-digit games for the second year in a row. All right, they won 12 games a year ago. They have won 10 now. Both of those numbers are double digits. That's the way numbers work. They have not done this. They have not won double-digit games in consecutive seasons since 1995 and 1996. Every year since 1997 that the Cowboys have had double-digit wins in a season, they have failed to reach that mark the following year. Now, there have been 2 instances where the Cowboys were playoff teams in back-to-back years, but they did that as wild card teams, obviously, in one of those years. So that being said, I think that McCarthy deserves a lot of credit for building a culture, a football culture that has gotten the Cowboys to this point, because here's the thing. It is very hard to win the Super Bowl, right? We all know that. The Cowboys probably won't win the Super Bowl, right? Like if you're laying out odds, and that's not just a reaction to today, it is difficult. You could say, if you could not find a team in the NFL to say they will probably win the Super Bowl, they have a 51% chance of winning the Super Bowl. It is a very difficult thing to do. But if you are a team that is in the mix, that is in the tournament, in the playoffs year after year after year after year, then odds are that at some point fate will smile upon you. And that being the case, I think Mike McCarthy deserves a lot of credit for building a team that has reached this point, that is going to be a playoff team in a second straight year, that can survive in a game like this, right? That can ultimately win this game. That being the case, you cannot tell us all week long that you're not worried about slow starts, that slow starts aren't a thing, that you're not going to have any slow starts, and come out and have a slow start. That falls on Mike McCarthy. We can sit here and we can apply fair blame and fair criticism to different players and different coaches, Dak Prescott, Kevontae Turpin, Dalton Schultz. I had Kellen Moore on this stock down list, but ultimately Josh Ball stole it from him. All right, we can sit here and blame a lot of people because there's enough blame. There's enough of this pie. Shout out to Mikey Montano, Stephen Jones once again. There's enough of this to go around, but it all starts at the top. It all starts with Mike McCarthy. You cannot have your team come out and be this flat. I'm sorry. You cannot play this poorly against a 1-10-1 team. You can't. You can't do this. And, before the game, I thought that there was a lot of great coverage around this subject. The Fox broadcast talked about how Mike McCarthy told the players, you cannot, smell the cheese, smell yourself, whatever it is, bite the cheese. I don't know the cheese expression that means this thing. You cannot do that. D-Day 2, thank you for letting us know that the Panthers are up 17-0 on Seattle right now. We like to see this because we want to see the Panthers win the NFC South. Anyway, back to the McCarthy point. Again, multiple things can be true. I still am very high on him. I think he should be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys for the long term. I think it would be a mistake for the Cowboys to move on from him in the offseason, regardless of what happened in the playoffs. That being said, today, Sunday, December 11th, you cannot lose this. I know they didn't lose, but you cannot play this poorly. You cannot play down to the Texans, and that's what they did. And we've seen the Cowboys do that a little bit now, right? I think we're learning, if you didn't know this already, that the Giants maybe not that great of a football team. The Giants have kind of struggled. Did you know that the Giants are in last place in the NFC East? Did anybody know that? And I know that's not anything to be ashamed of in 2022, but the Giants have fallen all the way to last place. And so the Cowboys Giants held tough with them for a little bit on Thanksgiving. It's a short week. Okay, it's Thanksgiving, whatever. Colts held tough with the Cowboys. That was very well chronicled over the course of last week before the big fourth quarter ballooning. And this game, it took a massive, heroic drive from the Cowboys, from Dak Prescott, to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Mike McCarthy, just because the Cowboys won this game, should not ultimately be levied or exonerated from any sort of blame or criticism in my mind. Stephen Jones, by the way, has chimed in and said, forgive me, I'm just sad and want Steele back. We all understand where you're coming from, Mikey. So, let's see here. Carlos, thank you for the super chat. Says, I'm here late, so hopefully you didn't already say this, but stock up Jason Peters for bringing stability to the O-line after the disaster that is Ball. We did touch on this, Carlos, and I think that this is an example of where McCarthy, and everybody, I don't mean to put this all at the feet of McCarthy, but where they failed, right? I mean, to your point, Carlos, Jason Peters' play at right tackle saved them. Does anybody here, you can answer if you want to, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this question or this, whatever. Does anybody here think that that last drive happens with Josh Ball at right tackle? Do any of us think that? Do any of us really think that the Cowboys pull off that incredible last drive to go score the game-winning touchdown? Do we think that they do that if Josh Ball is playing right tackle instead of Jason Peters? The answer is no. They do not do that if Josh Ball is in there. All right, all of you are saying no. However, the Cowboys did put in Jason Peters. They deserve credit, but they also dug the hole, right? They dug the hole by putting Josh Ball out there to begin with. They dug the hole by believing in Josh Ball over the course of the preseason and training camp, even when all of the evidence suggested that they should not do that. They dug the hole by drafting Josh Ball in the 4th round despite a very questionable pass. They dug that hole. Just because they pulled themselves out of the hole does not mean that they didn't put them in the hole to begin with. So I just think that McCarthy deserves his fair share of criticism for this game, for this performance, despite the fact that the Cowboys were able to ultimately do the thing that mattered, which is to win. But he is different from his predecessor because I agree with Amit here, says Garrett would have let Ball stay in. I totally agree with you. The Cowboys would have Chaz Greened Josh Ball and said, like, well, you got to win. You got to beat your man opposite of you. You got to win your one-on-one battle. And I give Mike McCarthy some credit for saying, you know what, dude? This sucks. Don't do this anymore. Let's get Jason Peters in there, and let's just win this game and figure it out. So I think that Mike McCarthy, while some things from this game were kind of good in a weird, toxic way, deserves criticism for ultimately the way it began and continued all the way up until the very end. Let's see here. Mark says, we absolutely played down to our competition. I agree with that. Matt says, Cowboys deserve both praise and scorn for how the game went today. Agreed. And that's the thing. Like, this is a difficult thing to do when you talk about really anything, but certainly sports. People want to live in the extreme. Well, they won, dude. Why are you mad? Why are you upset? My team's 10-3. Why are you mad? I'm mad because they should have lost this game. Right? If we're really fair, they probably should have lost, but they didn't. And that's a good thing. But just because they didn't doesn't mean that they are blameless for the things they did. That means they should have lost. Fab, says our front four haven't been getting pressured 2 weeks in a row. Agree with that. And I don't want to, bag on Dan Quinn, but what's going on, Danny? What's happening here, Dan Quinn? Because you were supposed to be the one. Like I just sat here and went on a 10-minute tirade about Mike McCarthy. What's going on? What's going on, Dan Quinn? We're sitting here talking about Micah Parsons not making the same impact over the course of the last 2 weeks. You're not getting home with 4 pass rushers. When you are sending your safeties, things aren't working out. You sent Jaron Kearse at one point in this game near the end, and you got burned on it. I mean, Dan Quinn has his flaws too. Everybody on the Cowboys has their flaws. Everybody has their moments. Everybody makes mistakes. That is obviously true in every aspect of life, but we act like somebody is infallible. Thank you, Glenn, for letting me know. Brock Purdy, in case you didn't watch any NFL pregame show today, Brock Purdy was the last pick in the draft. They call that Mr. Irrelevant. So he's Mr. Irrelevant, but he just had a rushing touchdown to go up, to put the Niners up, 13-0, extra point pending against the Bucs. We got the Bucs losing. We got the Panthers winning. It is doable, people. We can get the Panthers to first place in the NFC South. That is, what matters the most. Brian, thank you for the super chat. Says Dak just got sacked in the locker room when you mentioned Chaz Green. Thank you for the super chat. Chaz Green, very good time. Caleb says, RJ, in your prediction article, you said style points don't matter, and today that's what happened. I agree. I mean, I agree with myself. I trust myself more than anybody, except for my wife. My wife knows everything. I'm, definitely don't know everything compared to my wife. But that being the case, they got the win, and that is ultimately what matters. There is no world where I would rather be 9-4 than 10-3. To be very clear, I'm happy with the net result of this game, but results don't justify the process, right? We can't sit here, and I don't think that's what you're doing, Caleb, but I don't think we should sit here and say everything worked out. This team is great. Let's party, rock on. Let's, continue on. Jacksonville up next. No, they should have lost this game. They did not. And they deserve credit for that. But they also deserve criticism for getting into that position. They were 17-point favorites. And maybe you don't care about that. Maybe you don't care about lines or anything like that. But man alive, they should not have been in this situation from the beginning. They did. I mean, it is just a very, 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 very frustrating thing that happened to us. So anyway, let's move on. Shane says, if you're satisfied with the result of this game, you have no interest in winning a Super Bowl. I agree with that. Agreed. Trayvon Diggs just tweeted out, Cowboys win, great fight, with a handshake emoji, even though both his thumbs are hurt right now. So kudos. I mean, the Cowboys won. That's what matters the most. But we have some bigger goals, some bigger dreams, some bigger aspirations. And if the Cowboys play like this, I hate to lean on this trope, but if they play like this against the Eagles or even the Vikings, the Vikings lost today, the Lions, the spunky, plucky Lions, the Niners certainly, I mean, they are not going to go very far. Think Tank Gallery says, RJ, what happened to putting CD in the interesting motion plays we gave him last week? That's a good question. That's a very good question that I would like to know the answer to, but we do not know. It's a tough scene. 34 says, RJ, have you ever seen someone miss a kick in our stadium besides us? Totally. Very much. That happens all the time. Mark says the frustrating thing is we all know this team can do it, but they keep letting us down. I agree with that. It's tough. Terso says play calling is to blame for me. I'm kind of with you. I sometimes, I'm not saying you're doing this, Terso, but I sometimes think that we just throw the play calling like blanket over things, right? Like you remember in Adam Sandler when the kid spills the milk and Adam Sandler's character, or not, what was did I say you remember in Adam Sandler? You remember in Big Daddy with Adam Sandler was my point. When the little kid spills the milk and Adam Sandler just grabs or I don't know if it's when he spills the milk or when he has an accident, whatever, but he puts newspaper on it. That's how Adam Sandler treats it, right? Like he just is like, oh, there's a mess. There's a liquid mess on the floor. Here, we'll just put some newspaper on it. Boom, problem solved. That's how I feel we sometimes are with saying, well, I think play calling was the issue. There was a lot of issues. Execution is a big issue. I mean, if you are somebody who griped about the play calling at the end of the first half, Cowboys came out in the second half and ran the ball 9 times in a row, got all the way down to the goal line and couldn't punch it in. They ran the ball 9 times. It was as if the Cowboys were a part of this postgame show or Twitter or whatever. And we're like, all right, you want us to run the ball? You know what? We're going to run this ball. We're going to put this newspaper on here and we're going to run this ball. And it didn't work out. And so I don't think that play calling is the entirety of the issue. It's tough. By the way, I just saw somebody note about a Michael Gelkin tweet. I'm trying to find it myself just to be 100% certain. I believe you, but I do not want to get this wrong because this would be not great if it were the case. My other computer's a bit slower. Let's see here. Here's the Michael Gelkin tweet from 18 minutes ago, the middle of my Mike McCarthy rant. Cowboys defensive end Dorrance Armstrong exited the stadium with his right foot in a protective boot. He sprained his ankle on the Hail Mary interception. A person familiar with the injury said believed to be a low ankle sprain, and Gelkin specified that a high ankle sprain is more severe. So no need to totally panic right there. It is what it is. Matt says still going to ride high on the win today, but I'm sure that by tomorrow morning, I'll feel a different way. I actually feel the opposite. I feel really upset right now and happy. Look, at the end of the day, our favorite football team is 10-3, right? At the end of the day, life is still pretty sweet. At the end of the day, this team has lost 1 game since Halloween, right? It's not hard, right? Like we have been through much worse. But tomorrow, I think as some more time, goes on, it will feel a little bit less frustrating. When we rewatch it, it'll be frustrating all over again. But I think we'll start to feel better as we get further and further and further away from it. Mark says, I was concerned about this game all week. Well, I'm glad we made it through the other side, Mark. Nathan says, I didn't get to watch the game due to coverage issues, and watching the play-by-play on my fantasy all about gave me a heart attack, especially before the last drive. It felt like that in the moment, Nathan. It really did feel like that. D-Day 2 brings up the Eagles played like this versus the Colts. Yeah, mentioned that the Bills played like this against the Lions. I know the Lions are a better team than that. It's tough. Whatever. Let's see here. Let's move on. Shane says, only thing to me was I felt there should have been more run calls today. This game seemed tailor-made for it against a major underdog. Agreed. Very much agreed. Let's see here. Brian says every team has let down games. The Eagles let down. It is true. I mean, you're not going to score 33 points in every fourth quarter. Dak Prescott was asked, I believe here, about his 9 interceptions in 8 games. He said, I'm damn sure not a fan of that. He said he made a poor judgment on the first interception against the Texans and that his arm was hit while throwing the second. He said, damn right, it's frustrating, and he will still stay aggressive with the football, but vows to be to better weigh risk versus reward. I don't think that Dak is like the problem. And to be clear, I don't know that there is a huge problem. Like there's not a massive problem. We are, these are first world football problems, right? Like our team is 10-3 and we're sitting here like nitpicking and whatever. But man, Dak's got to be better about that. You cannot put yourself in this kind of hole against a lot of teams and win. The Texans are one of them. Let's see here. I don't have him on my stock report because it was a little touch and go. So I just wanted to save it for a general conversation. So I'll ask the question. I think, by the way, that Russell Wilson just threw a pick 6, and the Chiefs are an extra point away from going up 27-0 on them. Yes, that's what happened. 27-0 about to be the final score in Denver. This game was on prime time, so the NFL spared us. Thank you very much. Although the Dolphins are going to run away with it against the Chargers anyway. But so here's my question. I would like the class to answer. I love you all very much, and your opinions mean more to me than anything. So how did we feel about Kelvin Joseph? How do we feel? Because my opinion, as I wait for your comments, it was mostly bad. Now, Joey says, can't slam Joseph today. By bad, I don't mean it was like the worst of all time, but it was rough. Now, he did have the pivotal, critical, crucial third down stop at the very end. And so I am totally willing to give him credit, totally willing to kind of let myself believe that that's a building block, that's a moment we can move forward, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a lot of like, man, you know, Kevin, by the way, says Joseph played good. The deep play was a perfect pass. My perception on this, based on just my Twitter timeline, was that people truly were kind of on both sides of this. Logical fan says 50-50. That's kind of how I feel. Like, I don't think that, and that's why I can't really give him a stock down, because I feel like it was 50% good, 50% bad. So like I have a hard time leaning one direction or the other with him. I feel like I can't say it was a good game and I can't say it was a bad game. It was just kind of a so-so game. Maybe I expected a little bit too much in my deepest hope. But you know, just it was a little, maybe not underwhelming, but not quite overwhelming. So just kind of whelming. Brian, thank you once again for the super chat. Says KJ had a good PBU at the end, but it was an ugly game. Donnie says Joseph is going to have growing pains, but still a youngster. He needs to do some growing, and like with growing up, there will be growing pains. Glenn says the jury is still out. Give him next week against Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. I'm fine with that. Alex says, if anything, Joseph got himself back to even today. He's been a pure liability so far this season. Sorry, I'm not buying it. I'm kind of with this. Like he is now, like maybe now he's all square. I'm cool with that. Like maybe he was a little bit indebted to the house before this game, and now it's maybe if anything, he just kind of, you know, squared himself. I kind of like that thought. You know, just kind of is what it is. I mean, just an okay performance, not the best thing of all time, obviously, but you know, just a solid afternoon, I guess, for Kelvin Joseph. Now, I mentioned it. If you are watching us live on our YouTube broadcast, we do have our Righteous Felon Craft Jerky Player of the Game that you can vote for. It is a very, very tight race right now. We have 4 options for you. I haven't mentioned it because I thought it was obvious, but you have Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard, Leighton Vander Esch, or another player. Another player is in last place with 16%. So sorry, Noah Brown. Tony Pollard in second to last place at 19%. Leighton Vander Esch in second place at 32%, which means I think it is time for us to call it. Our Righteous Felon Craft Jerky Player of the Game has won with 34% of the vote, and it is Ezekiel Elliott, who had the game-winning touchdown against the Houston Texans. I would have gone with Leighton Vander Esch. That was my vote. A lot of you wanted it to be Tony Pollard. But Zeke had a really great game, I thought, in a lot of ways. We talked about him, obviously, on the stock-up list. Zeke had 15 carries, 62 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. Of course, had the game-winning score, had the longest run of the day for the Cowboys at 25 yards. Really did kind of look closer to his vintage self. Again, kind of a heavy thing to throw out there. On the subject of Righteous Felon, make sure you go to righteousfelon.com and use discount code BTB15 at checkout to get 15% off your order. Get the Nelson Mandela flavor. Trust me, you will never, ever, ever, ever eat any other beef jerky ever again. I mentioned my wife. I had never done stocking stuffers before I met my wife. She's a big stocking stuffer person. This is a phenomenal stocking stuffer. You get somebody some Righteous Felon, stuff it on in there, and it's a happy Merry Christmas for everybody. Let's see here. Toxic Sooner says he's similar to this postgame show. Not horrible, but still makes me shake my at the dumb decisions. You know what, Toxic Sooner? I appreciate the commentary. I'll work to be better. That's our goal around here. Look, it's our postgame show. If I can be better, I certainly want to be the best I can be to give everybody what they deserve. We're here to talk about the 10-3 Dallas Cowboys at the end of the day. Sometimes, like the Cowboys against the Texans, we're going to have some missteps. Sometimes we're going to make mistakes. Sometimes we're not going to be perfect. But you know what? We're going to land this plane and we're going to pull off the dub the way the Cowboys did. Scott says team-wide injuries are a concern. I agree with that. And it's a tough time of year for that, right? Because, you know, like last week, you lose Anthony Brown. It's like, well, you don't really have anybody. You have Kelvin Joseph, and it's like, I don't really really believe in Kelvin Joseph, but who else? What's the other option, right? You're just kind of stuck at this point in time. Jared, by the way, great point, says the Ancho Villa and Darth garlic flavors from Righteous Felon are great as well. Hey, anything from Righteous Felon. I love the biltong a little bit more and the meat sticks. The jerky is just a little bit harder to eat, but those are all phenomenal. Fab, did it again. Fab Sosa says Damone Clark is getting better week by week by week. I very much agree with that. We have a bot here. I'm going to get the bot out. Don't worry. The bot is gone. Let's see here. Where is it? I saw Kevin's comment I wanted to get to. Stockdown Washington talking trash about wanting his name to grow this week, and then is a ghost. I don't think that's fair. It was James Washington's first game. I mean, what's he going to say? I'm cool with that. I'm cool with the guy having lofty goals and lofty expectations. He hadn't been in like organized football at a competitive level. Yeah, he practiced, but like since training camp, since the first week of training camp. I mean, think about how different life was back in early, July or early August. I mean, it's just, I'm cool with that. It's unfortunate that James Washington couldn't reel in the one catch. But it's going to take some time. It took Michael Gallup time. Oh man, we didn't even talk about it, but the drop touchdown at the end was tough time for Michael Gallup. That's okay. You can't come down with them all. CeeDee Lamb, I really thought we were going to get like this big game from CeeDee Lamb, especially after the opening possession, but only 5 catches for 33 yards for CeeDee. He is now 39 yards away from hitting 1,000 on the season. I think I did that mental math right. So not quite 1,000 yards yet for CeeDee today. Kevin really stuck on this talking trash thing. I don't think he talked trash. I think James Washington was just confident. I think everybody was just kind of in the moment, but I'm fine disagreeing there. Michael P says, any reason D-Law was talking mad noise on the play that Pierce got hurt? Not totally sure. And I didn't give DeMarcus Lawrence a stock up, but I'm fine if you want to. I mean, the play at the end in and of itself, like I said, DeMarcus Lawrence, honorable mention for me. Donovan Wilson, honorable mention for me. Forced the fumble, obviously. By the way, how about that Trayvon Diggs recovery where he ran backwards like 1 billion yards? That was a wild sequence. It really just – I love this comment actually from Steven. It says, in years past, we lose this game. I agree with that. And – it was frustrating. It was very frustrating. It was concerning, right? There's a lot to kind of take away and be concerned about and wonder, et cetera, et cetera. This week will not be as fun as last week was, just as one example. But the Cowboys are 10-3. The Cowboys are closer to the 1 seed in the NFC than they were when this week began. They are getting closer to that in that respect. If the Eagles lose, like I said, if the Eagles lose on Sunday afternoon next week against the Chicago Bears, that's in Chicago if you're curious, Justin Fields could go off, do a crazy thing coming off the bye. If the Eagles lose that game, then Christmas Eve is for the 1 seed. And that is totally possible. The Niners, by the way, thank you to Mark, just scored to make it 21-0. There is a flag on the play, I think. No, that's a play before. Sorry, I'm behind you right here. I had to pause and move. Anyway, but man, I mean, I agree that they would have lost this game. And so I don't know what I think the ceiling is for this team. By the way, Loco tweeted out, Purdy is being very, very relevant. Nicely done. 1 point / JD26_JDog says, we can't win by 30 points every week. This is still the NFL. Matt, I saw this comment earlier. I don't know if it was you, Matt, or somebody else. And this had 2019 Jets games vibes written all over, but Dak Prescott put the team on his back and led them to victory. In case nobody remembers or somebody doesn't remember what Matt is talking about, the Cowboys were 3-0, I think, 3-0, heading to play the New York Jets in 2019. The Jets were 0-3, and I believe that was Sam Darnold's first game back from the mono that he had missed a game. Remember, everybody remembers that was a crazy sequence, etc. And the Cowboys lost that game. It was super embarrassing. Now, to the Cowboys' credit, they came out the next week and just destroyed. Actually, no, it was week 6. They fell to 3-3. Now that I'm remembering it more clearly now, the Cowboys lost that game. They lost 3 in a row after starting off 3-0. They lost 3 in a row to fall to 3-3, and then they destroyed the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. That was the night the Dak dance was born. And this game had that, right? The Jets, just kind of caught the Cowboys playing down to them and beat them. And I agree with that. This game had that vibe. And the Cowboys, to your credit, Matt, were able to say, enough. All right, let's get this one drive and get this win, and none of it matters. It all is learning opportunity. It all is data for us to take and learn from, but it will not hurt as much if we don't pull this one drive off. It should not have come down to that. It did, though, and they pulled it off. And so I agree that they are better than their previous selves. They don't get a trophy for that or anything, but that is in and of itself a very impressive thing. Patrick, very friendly friend of the show. Patrick is an Eagles fan. Everybody be cool to Patrick. Started off the comment, RJ, I'm an Eagles fan, and I think you're great. Toxic Sinner's just a hater. You know you made it when you have haters. Thank you, Patrick. I thought that comment was going to be about the Cowboys, but appreciate you checking in. Really looking forward to this Christmas Eve game, obviously, between the Cowboys and Eagles. You guys let me know, by the way, the Niners touchdown was called incomplete, so whatever. Anyway, man, this was a stressful day. This was a really, really stressful day, and it ended in a very positive way. And Perry ties a nice bow on this here. Says, sorry if it was said earlier, but how about those back-to-back double-digit win seasons? Again, and I'm with you, Perry, so I'm not disparaging the comment here. Nobody is saying the Cowboys are the greatest team in the NFL because they have had back-to-back seasons with double-digit wins. That, in the grand scheme of things, not even the grand scheme, like the medium scheme, is meaningless, right? Cool. Congratulations. You are a functionally good football team. But you know what, people? They haven't been. They haven't been a functionally good football team. I wrote about this subject actually at blogontheboys.com this past week, and there was a comment that I loved that said, you know, every year that the Cowboys have been really good, there's been this pressure, you know, that this kind of, because there's this precious sort of energy around it, that knowing that they're going to have some sort of fallback next year, right? Like in 2014 and 16 and 18 and 21, we all kind of always had the same thoughts, like, oh man, this loss really hurts because it's so hard to get back here. And we know that it's hard to get back because the Cowboys haven't gotten back. They haven't been double-digit win teams in consecutive seasons in over 25 years. And yet here they are. They are a playoff team. Not mathematically. The Eagles, they did punch their playoff ticket today. The Minnesota Vikings did not clinch the NFC North today, but the Eagles are officially headed to the playoffs. The Cowboys are not there yet, but they will be soon enough. I mean, they have 10 wins with 4 to go. They are all but guaranteed a spot in the playoffs this year. And that being the case, they are going to be a playoff team in back-to-back seasons for the first time since 2006 and 2007. That should be celebrated. That should be something that we are excited about, both for the here and now and for the future. And that is in itself a very, 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 very good thing. Let's see here. Perlman family. Sorry about that. The L confused me. He says, new to the live chat, RJ. Welcome, Perlman family. Usually listen to you during the week after the live show. How can we possibly beat the Eagles when they hit 4th and 1 every time? And we are maybe 50-50. I agree. The Eagles' 4th and 1 conversion is maybe the most surefire thing in the NFL, which is terrifying. I mean, the question, how can you beat them? How can you beat the Eagles if you're the Cowboys? You can't play like this. You can't. I mean, and the frustrating thing, and it's been said, we've talked about it around in circles, we know the Cowboys have maybe not perfect football in them, but very good football, you know, start to finish football in them. We know that they have that within them. And that's why this is frustrating. We know you're a better team than this, Cowboys, than to play down to the Texans and eke out a win 27-23. You won. Good for you. Respect. You're 10-3, double-digit win seasons and all that jazz. But you should not have been in this position. Learn the lesson. Take the moral loss. Build upon it. Let's go to Jacksonville next week. Get the dub. Get ready for Christmas Eve. Get ready. By the way, that Thursday night football game against the Titans after the Eagles game, I was a little bit nervous about that, and I'm still a little bit scared of Derrick Henry. Don't get me wrong. But after today, after seeing the Niners touchdown is good, by the way, Christian McCaffrey. So it is 20-0 extra point coming against the Bucs. That is great to see as a Cowboys fan. Although the Niners staying good definitely is concerning. Maybe the Purdy thing chills out. Who knows? But anyway, that Titans game, I'm a little bit less scared of. But I'm maybe a little bit more scared of the Jaguars game. Kind of go back and forth. But either way, let's get through Jacksonville, get to Christmas Eve, and let the cards fall where they may. The Cowboys are in this. The Vikings lost today. Their list of things they need is down to 1. We needed 2 things as Cowboys fans. Obviously, besides for the team to keep winning, we needed a Vikings loss at some point and an Eagles loss at some point outside of the Cowboys game. We got that Vikings loss. That should be celebrated. All right, we got that loss. We got one of the 2 things that we need. We need one more thing, and the Cowboys control their own destiny with regards to the number 1 seed in the NFC. Eileen Peppers says, I'm thank you for the super chat. Eileen says, I'm sick of fans assuming we need to win by 30. SMH. I agree with you. That's why multiple things can be true, right? We can sit here and say, look, they didn't dominate the Texans. That's okay. We can also, on the other hand, say, well, but they kind of played down to them. They should be better than that, right? You don't have to be on your A+ game every week, but you can't throw up a D game, right? They threw up a D game in this particular game. They won. Give them their credit, give them their props, but we expect better. You don't have to play 30-plus point margin to victory football all the time, but you got to play better than this. That's the one thing that we're asking for. Caleb says Purdy is playing a pretty good game today. Wow. Well said. Well said. By the way, and we'll talk about this obviously in the week. The Cowboys are, in case you don't know, the Cowboys are going to visit Jacksonville next Sunday. That is going to be the Cowboys' first visit to Jacksonville since 2006. That is crazy to me. That is wild. The Cowboys have not played a game against the Jaguars in Jacksonville since 2006. And if you're wondering, if you're like, how's that possible? The last time the Cowboys visited the Jaguars when they should have played in Jacksonville in 2014, that was a home game for the Jaguars, obviously, but it took place in London. So that is why it's been so long for the Cowboys having visited Jacksonville specifically, which they will do on Sunday for the first time. That Jacksonville game in 2006, by the way, that was T.O.'s first game as a member of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Eston Kirby says that game next could be a true trap game. I think that, so people misuse the term trap game. This does fit the definition because it could be a trap game in that the Cowboys are looking forward to the Eagles the next week, blah, blah, blah. I think we should all be grateful. Moral loss, again, the Cowboys won their trap game, right? The Cowboys flew very close to the sun today against the Houston Texans, and they hopefully learned their lesson and therefore won't have the trap game next week against the Jaguars. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope that your fantasy teams are doing well. We're getting down to that time of year where it's fantasy playoff season. I hope your Christmas shoppings go well, whatever. I hope you're enjoying new TV shows, new movies. I started that Pepsi documentary thing on Netflix. Holy crap, that story is wild. So if you haven't started that, give it a chance. I highly, highly, highly recommend. So let's go ahead and let's get out of here. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa. I've been putting stuff up on Instagram and TikTok this year. I'm on TikTok, RJ.Ochoa. If you want to send me an email, Toxic Sooner, you have a list of things that you think I can do better, I am very, very, very open to hearing them. I want to make this show as best as it possibly can be. For Dallas Cowboys fans across the world, my email is rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. If you want to leave a comment here, we'll get to those as well. If you have not yet, please consider liking this video, subscribe to the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel, or if you're listening on the podcast side of things, subscribing to the Blog and the Boys podcast network, leaving a rating and writing a review. Let's bounce. The Dallas Cowboys 10-3. However they got here, they ultimately did. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. Have a great week. Tomorrow, victory, Polo Monday. We love you all.